Isaac Manor stood in front of the gate after 5 long years of imprisonment. As he looked out, he saw the waiting admissions committee. His ex-wife, his ex-daughter, her father, her mother, and his brother. Isaac turned his head to the guard and asked, "Sir, is there any other way out here? I don't want to run through this slum." He nodded at the small crowd in front of the gate. "Don't you want to see your family?" a guard asked in surprise. "I have no family anymore. They have all betrayed me. And there is still the small matter of the restraining order, though I don't know if it is still in effect." The guard thought for a moment. This prisoner had always been very helpful and friendly. He called out and informed the gatekeeper that he would be using the emergency exit, and said to Isaac, "This way." The guard led Isaac through a maze of corridors until they came to a small steel door. The guard unlocked it and led Isaac outside. At 2:30, Lydia, Isaac's ex-wife, looked at her watch and asked her father, "He was supposed to be released at 2, wasn't he?" When her father nodded affirmatively, Lydia went to the gate and asked the guard at the lodge what time she could expect Isaac Manor to show up. The guard checked the log and replied, "He was released half an hour ago." At his request, through the back door. Tears appeared in Lydia's eyes. "Out the back door? Why?" "We came to welcome him back." "I know he's angry with us, but that angry? He has no one else." "Do you have an address?" "I can't give you his address, ma'am. He asked me not to tell anyone, and I overheard him talking to the sergeant." "Did he also say he had a restraining order against him? Do you want him back in jail after all he's been through?" Lydia turned white. "A restraining order? Oh shit, I totally forgot about that." Meanwhile, Isaac walked briskly toward the bus station, reflecting on the past 6 years. He had plans of where to go and people he was supposed to meet. 6 years ago, Isaac had been a happy man, married to Lydia for 18 years, and very much in love with his 16-year-old daughter, whom he named Tommy, short for Thomasina, after her grandmother. At the time, he was a 40-year-old software engineer. He was able to write his own computer programs and was building self-learning robots as a hobby. He was also working on his so-called discipline project, rewiring and reprogramming the security system, adding an independent backup system. It included a hidden communication link to a remote and hidden server hard drive. The entire system had an independent power source powered by solar panels on the roof. On a whim, he built another secret system in his garden with a 4-petabyte backup, outside the garden perimeter but still on his land. To complicate matters, he designed a dual camera system hidden in a sound system on the ceiling. Isaac needed a good security system as his one-man company did a lot of work for the government, and he was happy to work on this project anyway. His house, big enough for a family, stood at the end of a cul-de-sac in dens along with 4 other houses. On the plot behind the house, he built a spacious office and still had enough room for a large garden. At the age of 20, he bought the plot and built a house bordering a forest reserve with the profits from the creation of an internet search engine for software solutions. He developed it and released it on the web, where one of the software giants immediately purchased it for use on their intranet. Isaac was an average man, 6 feet 2 inches, 190 pounds, with dark blonde hair and light brown eyes and a friendly face with generous lips, and a beard that he had to shave off in the evenings when he wanted to go out and look presentable. He loved bicycling and walking, but didn't like vigorous physical exertion. Isaac was shy, but when he came out of his shell, he became a caring, charming, witty person and a good conversationalist who could talk about a wide variety of topics. He was also an avid reader and could quickly read anything in no time and even years later recall articles and passages from books. This came in handy in his work. 6 years ago, local Sheriff Peter Ramsday asked him to update the program controlling traffic lights in dens. Traffic had to become more efficient to reduce pollution. That's when things went wrong for him. When Isaac and Lydia invited the sheriff to dinner to discuss the progress of the project, the sheriff, when introduced to Lydia, immediately began fantasizing about a statuesque woman. It took Ramsday 6 months to realize his fantasy. Late one morning, Isaac finished the road project and headed home to celebrate and take his wife out to dinner. In the driveway, he saw an unfamiliar car. Guests? He thought. He walked into the house and saw Lydia and Sheriff. "What the hell is going on here?" he shouted. The sheriff stopped, smirked at Isaac. Then he said mockingly to Lydia, "Oh, the little one has learned. Now I'll leave you two alone and you tell him the rules." Lydia looked slightly embarrassed, but nodded in agreement as the sheriff walked out of the house. As the door closed behind him, Lydia asked Isaac, "Can we talk about this like adults?" Isaac's shock and sadness subsided, making way for an icy, calculating anger. "I want you out of the house. Pack your things and leave." "No." You let me have one affair. It won't last long. It'll be over soon. If you don't, the consequences will be yours and you won't like them. If you file for divorce, I'll take everything you have from you and you'll never see Tommy again. You're delusional. You can't possibly think I'd agree to that? You're out of your mind. Lydia sighed. I was afraid you'd react this way. I love you, but I need this, and it will pass. Don't do this to yourself. With icy calm, Isaac replied, Are you the one doing this to me and threatening me? You should know that I don't respond well to threats. I'm leaving now and will be back at 6 this evening. In the meantime, your lover can entertain you as he pleases. I'll never touch you again. But when I come back, you'd better go. Lydia opened her mouth but thought better of it, and lowering her head, walked out the bedroom door. 5 minutes later, Isaac was back in the car and on the phone with his lawyer to make an appointment. In the evening, Isaac returned to an empty house and his anger was replaced by sadness and grief. At 8 the next morning, Isaac's attorney entered his home office. Ben Green and Isaac were good friends, so a meeting before the workday began was easily arranged. Isaac set down the coffee pot and asked, Coffee? Yes, black with a little water. The nail polish remover you serve as coffee is too harsh for my stomach. So what is this problem you need to solve so urgently? Isaac told him about catching Sheriff Peter Ramsday with Lydia, and also about Lydia's threats. Ben looked shocked and more than a little frightened. Peter Ramsday, hell, that's bad news. He's corrupt as a rotting corpse, but no one can prove it. He got Lydia into this, and he always has other plans. You have to protect yourself, financially and possibly physically. Isaac's brain kicked in with renewed vigor. His friend wasn't easily intimidated, so he came up with a quick and dirty solution. I'll give you power of attorney. You can print out the appropriate documents here, and I'll sign them right away. If things go wrong, you can handle my finances. I'll give you a flash drive with all the information you need. And you need to start the divorce. Ben nodded, and at 9:30 was about to leave when there was a loud bang and the door flew inwards. 5 policemen rushed inside and knocked both men to the floor. Which one of you is Isaac Manor? Shouted one of them. Isaac, lying face down, mumbled into the carpet that he was the man they wanted. You're under arrest, said the officer. For what? Asked Isaac, stunned. As if you didn't know. Your wife and daughter have filed abuse charges, and they're being examined right now. I abused Lydia and Tommy? No way. I haven't touched them or seen my daughter at all since yesterday morning. Ben intervened. Isaac, keep your mouth shut. Don't say anything, I'll handle it. He turned to the officer and asked, Where are you taking him? To 2nd Street, came the curt reply. Be careful, Isaac. Don't let yourself be fooled and don't say anything without my presence. Ben called out as Isaac was pushed into the back seat of the police car. Ben quickly made it to his office and locked the flash drive in the safe. He told his fiancée Anna, who was also his secretary, that Isaac had gotten into a confrontation with Sheriff Ramsday and was suddenly arrested for assaulting Lydia and Tommy. He rushed to the station on 2nd Street. When he arrived, he identified himself as Isaac's attorney, and the officer on duty told him to wait. An hour later, the officer curtly informed him that Mr. Manor had been transferred to the Forest Lane station. An icy lump began to form in Ben's stomach. The thought flashed through his mind that Ramsday was trying to keep him away from Isaac so that he might have more time to force a confession. So he rushed to Forest Lane. At the counter, he told the officer on duty that he had come from Mr. Manor, and the waiting game began again. When the duty officer said Isaac wasn't there, but at the 2nd Street station, Ben had had enough. He pulled out his cell phone, scrolled through his contacts, and hit speed dial on the friendly judge's number. He explained to the judge what had happened, who was involved, and that they were scamming him. The judge told Ben to put Ben on speakerphone. In a clear voice, he asked, Mr. Green, is the officer on duty in the vicinity? Yes, sir, the officer is listening now with his supervisor. Good. Gentlemen, this is Judge Orlando speaking. It appears that the police are preventing Mr. Manor's attorney from talking to his client. Is that correct? 3 broadcasts before noon is a bit much. No, sir, it's just a clerical error. Manor is on 2nd Street, the officer stammered, thinking, Damn. Sheriff Ramsday can kiss my ass next time. I'm not going to take the wrath of that judge on myself. When Mr. Green arrives on 2nd Street, he will have access to Mr. Manor without any delay. Understand? Mr. Green will be able to speak to an unharmed Mr. Manor as soon as he enters the station. That means no bruises, no falling downstairs, no accidents, no questioning without a lawyer present. Do I make myself clear, gentlemen? Now to the books. Your names, ranks, and badge numbers, please. Both men were sweating profusely despite the air conditioning. When the phone conversation was over, the supervisor offered to escort him to 2nd Street. There he found Isaac sitting in a cell waiting for Ben. Ben pulled a voice recorder out of its case and pressed the red button. "Isaac, have they tried to interrogate you?" "Yes, they tried. They also tried to intimidate me. They threatened me with a baton if I didn't confess to attacking and seriously injuring Lydia and Tommy. I told them to do what they needed to do, but that I wouldn't say anything without my lawyer present." "Did they treat you well?" "They didn't treat me at all. I haven't had a drink since they brought me here, and I wasn't allowed to go to the bathroom. Then all of a sudden it stopped. I was able to go to the bathroom and I got a cup of rotten tea. I'm afraid something bad is waiting for me." "I'm sorry, Isaac. I'm afraid of that too." "It's all too well thought out. Have you been transferred to another station?" "No. I've been here since my arrest." Ben took a deep breath. "I'm going to turn your case over to a colleague of mine. I'm basically a family law attorney. I'm going to handle your divorce. My colleague is much better suited for this case. Is that okay with you?" "Yes." "That's fine. Just remember to use your power of attorney." 6 months later in court, Isaac didn't stand a chance. Photographic evidence was presented, testimony from Lydia and Tommy, and 2 women Isaac had never heard of who said Isaac was prone to violent tantrums. Isaac couldn't present an alibi for that night because the hard drives suddenly failed during the examination. He didn't want to reveal his backup system, independent of the one they'd sabotaged. He might need it in the future. The prosecutor portrayed him as a bad father and an even worse husband who mistreated and abused his wife and daughter. All the while, Lydia and Tommy sat staring awkwardly ahead. Isaac thought they didn't look very healthy, but he didn't care. He himself sat stoically on the bench, waiting for the axe. The jury swallowed it all and found Isaac guilty on all counts. Finally, the judge passed sentence. Isaac was sent to prison for 5.5 years, minus the pre-trial detention. With any luck, he'd be out in 3.5, but Isaac was counting on the full 5 because of the sheriff's tentacles. As the judge read the sentence, he heard Lydia sigh. When he looked at her, he saw that she had turned ashy and his daughter was crying, eyes bulging. The only one grinning like the proverbial Cheshire cat was Peter Ramsday. Back in his cell, he got a visitor. The only thing the woman said as she handed him a thick envelope was, "You have been served." Isaac handed the envelope to his lawyer and asked him to give it to Ben Green. Left alone, Isaac sank to the hard bench in despair. 2 weeks after the end of his sentence, Ben came to visit Isaac to talk about the divorce. In the envelope were divorce papers and adoption papers that needed to be signed in order for Tommy to be adopted by Peter Ramsday. Isaac signed them without a second thought, even though it hurt like hell. Then he went over Lydia's demands with Ben. The house, half their savings, $5,000 a month for 5 years, and a trust fund for Tommy's education. Ben smirked but said nothing until he pulled out a small, high-pitched buzzer for peeping protection. Finally, Isaac asked in bewilderment, "That's it? So if I sign this, they'll leave me alone and can't go back to it?" Ben, still smirking, replied, "Yes." "That's right." Isaac was silent for a moment. "The house was mine before we were married. So that's an absolute waiver. It remains mine. Please board it up and put a fence around it. Turn off the water but keep the electricity on. And since that asshole is going to adopt Tommy, he can pay her tuition. Can you do that? 5 times 12 times $5,000 is $300,000, right? Just pay it in a lump sum and half of our savings is about $700,000? Offer her a round million and tell them to take the lump sum. No house and no trust funds. Otherwise, we'll start a war and make it as ugly as possible." Ben gathered his things and told Isaac he would make a counteroffer. Before turning off the buzzer, he asked, "Didn't Lydia know about the investment fund?" Isaac replied, "I mentioned it from time to time, but I never told her how big it was. By the way, has the city paid for the traffic light software upgrade yet? I'm guessing not, so I'd remind them if I were you. This money, about $175,000, is your fee. I may need you again in the future." Ben went home both sad and happy at the same time. Sad that his friend would disappear for another 5 years in prison for something he didn't do. And happy because he could finally afford the house he and his fiancée had their eye on. But first they had to get $175,000 out of the municipality. Ben knew they were legally obligated to pay it, but would probably do everything they could to avoid paying it. The next day, Isaac found himself in his new home. After the obligatory speech by the warden, he was escorted to his new residence. When he found himself in his cell, the biggest man he had ever seen stood before him. He was told that K2 was the biggest bully in the prison, and that as they promised, he would be given a warm welcome. K2 was concentrating on writing something on a piece of paper. Isaac took it all for granted and politely cleared his throat. K2 growled at him. If you ever tell the others that I can't write properly, you will die a very painful death. Isaac was stunned and asked, No one took the time to teach you? K2 looked up in surprise. You're the first person to ask that. I've had to work since I was 8 years old. What are you trying to write? No offense. A letter to my grandmother. She turns 87 next week. Can I help? If you dictate what you want to write, I'll write it down. No. I want to write it myself. I haven't finished it yet. When I'm done writing, you can rewrite it. That's a good idea, K2 exclaimed enthusiastically and clapped him on the shoulder. Oh, be careful. I'm not a mountain. Don't you want to learn to read and write? I can teach you if you want. The mountain man, whom everyone was afraid of, had tears coming to his eyes when he said, Yes, I would like that very much, but if you tell the others. Isaac quickly replied to diffuse the situation. Why would I do that? You're trying, and that makes me try to help you. Anyone who tries deserves help. My name is Isaac. What's yours? I'm Fabian Small. Don't laugh at me. But everyone calls me K2. I don't know why, but they call me K2. K2 is the second highest mountain in the world. It's also by far the most dangerous mountain in the world. Much more dangerous than Everest. I think you need to keep up Fabian's reputation. Isaac smiled at those words. After that, the ice was broken, and K2 dictated his letter to his grandmother. Isaac wrote it in large block letters, and K2 had no trouble copying it. Shortly thereafter, lessons began. After 2 weeks of detention, Isaac received a phone call. He had visitors, but he wasn't expecting anyone. Before going to prison, his brother had scolded Isaac during his only visit and told him he wanted nothing more to do with him. The only person he expected to visit was Ben, who wasn't due to visit him until the following week. Isaac walked into the visitor's room and saw his soon-to-be ex-wife and daughter at a table near the back wall. He walked over to the table where the guard was sitting and said with a chuckle, Come to gloat? Here's your chance. He turned and said to the guard, I've had enough. I want to go back to my cell, please, and walked out again. He heard Lydia wailing after him, Isaac, please wait. He just walked on, and the door closed behind him. Isaac turned to the guard and asked, Sir, is there any way to prevent this from happening again? They put a ban on me and now they come to rub up against me? I can certainly do without such visitors. The guard told Isaac that he would talk to the warden. Ben and Isaac sat in a small conference room designed for attorney-client negotiations. Ben, as usual, let out his noise emitter before saying, I have an amended divorce proposal here. Isaac raised an eyebrow. What do you mean modified? More money, more what? Ben looked at his papers and replied, No, Lydia is willing to give up half the money if she can talk to you. I'm sorry, Ben, but you will be the bearer of bad news to her. Please tell her verbally that I would rather shell out $500,000 than talk to her or her friends and relatives. Isaac, that's a very expensive disclaimer. You do realize that, don't you? Yes, Ben, I do realize that. But it's only money, and I've been humiliated enough. Please pass on the message, and may they rot in hell. Ben sighed. Okay, I'll do as you ask. Is there anything else I can do for you? Isaac smiled in anticipation of what would follow next. He said, Yes, you can. I need children's books for reading, starting from level 1 all the way up to the highest level. 2 for each level. He was not disappointed. Ben's mouth dropped open and his eyes got as big as saucers. Ben stammered, Why do you need this? Did they blow your brains out? No, but keep it a secret. It's for my cellmate. I'm teaching him to read and he's pretty good at it, so now I need books for him to read. Ben smiled. So typical of Isaac Manor. Good. I'll take care of it. The following week, the mail brought Isaac a package. Much to the delight of the guards and prisoners, one of the guards unpacked the books and then commented on Isaac's intelligence. Isaac merely shrugged and accepted the comments without words. Back in the cell, K2 was furious about these comments, but Isaac only laughed and said, Don't worry. You and I know better. Let that be the case. Now I want you to start on these 2 books. When you're done, I'll have questions, so read them carefully. What? You want me to read books? I don't need to read books. I want to be able to read so they can't get me into something. That's where you are seriously mistaken, my friend, and even more than you realize. First, reading books helps you to read newspapers and other things better by recognizing words more easily. Second, and I think this is more important, reading books teaches you much more than just how to read better. Newspapers and books can be so much fun if you can read well. Just humor me, please. Start reading the damn books and make sure they don't notice you. Fabian hummed. Okay, I'll try, but only because you called me a friend. Well, aren't you? And Isaac held out his hand. K2's big paw squeezed it, and he replied, Yes. You are my first and only friend. Isaac's only thought was that K2 must have lived a terribly lonely life, and that he wished he could change that for the giant. Isaac entered his cell with difficulty. He had bruises all over his body. K2 immediately got to his feet, forgetting about the book, and helped Isaac into his bunk. Angrily and with a sound like rock scraping, he asked, What the hell happened? Isaac tried to catch his breath and wheezed. It seems my wife insists on taking my house, so her friend Sheriff Peter Ramsday sent me a message. You don't want to give up your house? You'll be beaten until you give it up, K2 growled. I don't care if they beat me to death. But the house is mine and will remain mine, if only for sentimental value. God damn it! It hurts? K2 looked at the man. You mean that? I can see it. Can you describe them? Isaac gave K2 a description of one of the 4 men before he went to the prison ward. The next day, 4 more men were admitted to the prison ward, all of them severely damaged. To the other inmates and guards, the message was clear and clear. Isaac was to be left alone. Over the next month, K2 proved to be a sponge of information and a voracious reader. He was very intelligent, and only illiteracy had hindered his development. He was now catching up on his reading with fervor. He also began sending other inmates to Isaac, who became Doc Isaac. There were now about 10 inmates in Isaac's class who needed instruction. During one of these classes, a conversation came up about life after prison and the difficulties of finding a job. Some of them nodded, having been in prison for the second time. When Isaac asked why, they explained that it was unlikely that anyone would hire an ex-convict or only for very low pay. When they wanted to start their own business, they needed an investor or a bank loan. Both were unlikely or at very high rates because of their past. That gave Isaac an idea. He asked them what kind of business they would like to start. One man, with only 4 months to go, admitted to Isaac that he was a baker and would like to open a bakery of some sort. So Isaac asked him to write a plan outlining everything needed. The man looked at him strangely until Isaac told him it was an assignment for math class. K2 was also in that class, so Isaac asked him what he wanted to do after he finished his sentence. K2 told Isaac that he really wanted to work in the security business. Isaac smiled and said, It takes a thief to catch a thief? I have an idea, and if it works, I can be useful to you. From now on, you're my head of security, deal? With the familiar sound of stone grinding against stone, K2 replied, Oh yes, I agree. Very much so. And they shook hands again. During Ben's monthly visit, Isaac talked about his idea. He wanted to create an investment fund that would allow ex-convicts to start their own businesses. The fund would also help them deal with legal and financial red tape. Would Ben have wanted to participate? Isaac wanted to use some of his investment fund as seed money after the divorce. Ben thought for a moment, then said, I agree. You handle the financial side and I'll handle the legal side. Let's make a deal and I'll get to work right away. What a brilliant idea. Then he became thoughtful again. Isaac immediately took him under his arm and said softly, What's eating you? Spit it out, Ben replied. I had a long talk with Lydia. She signed the divorce papers and is now only asking for half of the savings with no alimony. She was upset by your response, and I think she realizes that you don't have a chance to talk to her. She will not claim the house and she will not ask for Thomasina's education fund. I brought the papers for you to sign. Isaac signed the divorce papers, surprised that Lydia had changed her mind. 6 months later, he was a bachelor again. His first thought was freedom, but it turned out to be the opposite. Isaac began to get used to life in prison. His and Ben's investment fund was doing very well. They had already helped many prisoners get jobs or start their own businesses, and now the money they had invested was starting to bring in good profits. Isaac was highly respected, and any newcomer who tried to joke with him got a very painful lesson in proper manners. Isaac was even given a separate room for his lessons, as the guards and wardens were well aware of the calming effect Isaac had on these men. This made their work much easier. One day, a welfare worker approached him and asked, Why isn't your name still up for parole? Isaac decided to put it bluntly. Because the warden is a friend of Sheriff Ramsday, and his reports on me are consistently negative. As a consequence, I don't even want to be paroled. Besides, if I get paroled, who's to say that my parole officer isn't also one of Ramsday's cronies? Could they, on a whim, put me back in prison and give me extra time? No, not for me. I'll be out in a year and truly free. You don't have much faith in the legal system of this city. No, ma'am. I was set up by the sheriff and my ex-wife when I caught them doing dirty deeds. but I can't prove it. Please don't talk to me about a fair legal system. Is that all, ma'am? Yes, yes. I'm sorry to bother you. Don't think about it, ma'am. The prisoners are quite happy with my presence. Good afternoon. The woman looked concerned as Isaac left. Isaac went to his training in self-defense class. He didn't like self-defense, but K2 insisted on it. During his almost 4 years in prison, Isaac had lost almost all of his body fat, which had been replaced by hard muscle only because K2 required him to train. And after the last event, K2 had started teaching him how to fight, to incapacitate his opponent as quickly and thoroughly as possible. On his way from the gym to his cell, he was intercepted by a guard. The warden wants a word. His office now. Damn, what did they come up with this time? Am I in trouble? He thought, feeling his stomach lurch. Outwardly calm and poised, he said, Yes, sir. Do I need to clean up or can I go like this? The warden said now. You can clean up later. 5 minutes after the knock on the door, Isaac found himself in the warden's office. The warden dismissed the guard and looked Isaac over. You might want to clean yourself up first. Isaac decided against the obvious answer and remained silent. After a while, the warden continued. I was told you know something about computers. Is that true? I was a computer programmer in a past life, warden, sir. That doesn't answer my question, prisoner. The question was, do you know anything about computers? There was something suspicious here. If the man was having computer problems, why didn't he just call the city council's information technology department? Isaac decided to take a chance. Sir, a computer has 2 parts. Software and hardware. If it's a software problem, I can probably fix it. The hardware problem, the machine itself, is less likely. There's nothing wrong with the machine. Now sit down and start looking for the problem. With those words, he left the office. Isaac, expecting a trap, started checking the computer. It is both a problem and a trap. The internet icon is in a prominent place, and they know that I have asked for the privilege several times. All of them have been denied, as have all the others. He has decided he will not go there. I guess they will keep an eye on the connection. He started doing some research. The first thing he found was a keylogger. Uh-oh. Cheeky, cheeky, cheeky. Any other surprises? He smiled to himself and continued checking. After half an hour of work and with a deep sigh of satisfaction, he found many problematic directories and files, poorly hidden, probably by an amateur and no match for a seasoned professional, even if the latter was a bit cocky. But most importantly, he found the problem. Even for a talented amateur, it was pretty simple, but Isaac wasn't about to tell the warden about it. Isaac waited, standing next to the desk and folding his arms, until the warden and the guard entered the office again. They looked disappointed. The warden asked with annoyance, Did you find the problem? Yes, sir. I can explain it. In private, please. The warden looked at the prisoner, who looked perfectly calm, and nodded to the guard to be left alone. Only after the guard closed the door did Isaac begin in a soft but firm voice. I found a huge amount of images and movies on this computer. I also found a program that records everything that happens on the keyboard. The downloaded video contained a software worm that is now slowly eating your files, including program files. You can try to claim that I am the one who downloaded these files, but the internet connection is monitored by the ISP as well. Thus, my lawyer will always be able to prove that I did not connect to the internet. I can solve your problem, but I need the internet to download some of my cleaning programs. The warden looked even paler than he was. It was a trap and it had failed. He had wanted to trick Isaac into getting illegal internet access so he could then report it and add another year to his sentence. Now he had a bigger problem. Okay, from now on you have unlimited internet privileges. Now get to figuring it out. Oh no, sir. That won't happen until my lawyer writes that I am not responsible for the contents of your computer and that you are granting me unlimited internet access. How dare you? The warden shouted. Isaac fell silent and endured the warden's stare, finally saying, Or you can call the city's information technology department to resolve this problem. The warden finally muttered, Who's your lawyer? Late one night, a week later, Isaac was on the spot. The warden didn't want anyone to know that an inmate was fiddling with his computer, so the first thing Isaac did was disable the keylogger. Then he compressed the files, but he didn't delete them from the computer. He hid them so that another programmer could find them in time, and the amateur couldn't. When he was finished with that, he installed and activated the internet software of his choice, and then began to look for solutions to the problems on the computer. When the issues were finally resolved, he began to brainstorm. Curious about what his home now looked like, and whether his alternative and hidden security system was still working, He paused for a moment to recall his IP address and password. To his joy, the system was still working, but what he saw simply amazed and horrified him. The house was nearly destroyed, and in the midst of the carnage stood Sheriff Ramsday, directing several men who were carrying something. He heard Ramsday shouting, "Come on, we haven't got all night! It's got to be in the streets tomorrow." Suddenly, Isaac saw how he would retaliate, and a plan matured in his mind. First, he had some unfinished business. With a wide grin on his face, he began preparing his computer. He wrote a small program to make his security system available to view and download live images and loaded it into the system, then checked to make sure it was working properly. When it was ready, he removed all traces of his tampering. He replaced the keylogger with something similar, but not as easily detectable. Finally, when everything was ready, he destroyed the malware he had highlighted earlier, but left one small problem for it to come back in a year. Just as Isaac was finishing the job, a supervisor burst into the office. "Are you finished?" he asked impatiently. "Just finished, sir. I think I've got everything, but I'm a little out of it. If you have any problems, sir, please call." "You bet I'll call and I won't be so lenient. The guard will escort you back." "Dismissed." "Yes, sir. Thank you, sir." And Isaac walked out. Back in his cell, K2 only looked at Isaac and said, "What are you up to? You look like the cat that swallowed the canary." "Revenge, Fabian." "Revenge. Now who do we have lined up to talk to Ben Green?" "I need him to deliver a letter. Do you happen to have a pen and paper?" A week later, the utterly stunned FBI agent read with growing confusion the letter handed to her by the attorney sitting in front of her. In this letter, Isaac carefully explained what had happened to him and what was going on in and around his home. At the very bottom was a series of numbers and something that looked like a password. She asked the lawyer, "Do you still have time?" "I need to consult with our IT people." Before Ben could answer the woman, she dialed the number and barked out a few commands, causing Ben to mutter, suppressing a grin. "I've got all day if you need it." The agent was beyond thrilled. If this was solid information, they would finally be able to nail that corrupt bastard Ramsday. The IT specialist came in with a cart filled with, among other things, computers and hard drives. When everything was ready, they checked to see if there was a connection. Ben confirmed that it was Isaac's house and was shocked by its condition. After that, they let him go. The letter stated that most of the action started late at night. Shortly before Isaac's release, the house was in turmoil. He was waiting for a visitor when Peter Ramsday entered to speak to a lawyer. Loud and rude, he was shackled and accompanied by 2 guards. Suddenly, he noticed Isaac openly smirking at him. Isaac could not help himself and laughed loudly. Ramsday became furious and shouted, "What are you laughing at? I still have friends outside. They'll take care of that piece of ass and that little tramp, and when they're done, we can always sell them to a brothel." K2, who had been planning his future with Ben, flinched and saw Isaac turn ashy. K2 looked at Ramsday with a fierce hatred in his eyes. Isaac was distracted by his visitor. She led him into a small conference room and pulled out a device from her bag, similar to the one Ben always used. Finally, she said, "Thank you. Your signal helped us catch them in the act. Along with the records we pulled from your security system, he's going to go to jail for a long time. But that's not why I'm here. Because of the sheriff's off-duty activities, he owes the IRS a lot of money. Normally, when someone reports tax fraud to the IRS, there's a reward. We thought we'd give you this reward as a thank you. Of course, we don't know how much it will be yet. Knowing this favor?" Isaac marveled at the effort they had put into this and replied, "I am grateful. Thank you. I'm happy enough to see the bastard behind bars as it is." They talked some more. The agent was trying to figure out how Isaac had found the entrance to his security system. Isaac smiled and dodged all questions. He still had a score to settle with the warden for stripping him of all the privileges he was entitled to and the negative reports the warden had issued to keep him in prison. That night, Peter Ramsday woke up in his high-security cell. He was very dizzy and lying on his back, which made him very uncomfortable. Stretching his arms and legs out to different directions, he tried to roll over to a more comfortable position, but it didn't work as he expected. He was tied down. "Did you threaten Doc Isaac? You're going to pay. If you entertained his wife, it'll cost you more." The voice came again. "If you try to threaten Doc again, you'll find out that we can get to you anytime, anywhere. Now listen very, very carefully. If Doc Isaac just stumbles and you or any of your little friends are in the neighborhood, or if anything happens to Doc's family or friends, however distant, we'll come and get the other one. Nod if you understand. We also think it would be good of you to apologize to all of us for the inconvenience you have caused this man, but that, I suppose, is not in the stars." The startled former sheriff nodded vigorously in agreement. Shortly after the incident, a guard led Isaac through the prison maze and then watched him leave through the back door. Isaac entered the bus and bought a ticket for a simple purpose. He needed transportation, communication, and a place to sleep for that night. That's where the XCOM Services Network came in handy for him. XCOM had been opened at the same time as Isaac and Ben's investment company called Izbexcon Investments. After 3/4 of an hour, Isaac got off the bus and walked for another half hour until he reached the parking garage. There he was greeted with a hearty shout, "Doc, you're out!" "Welcome back. Want a drink?" Isaac smiled broadly. "No, thanks. I need transportation. What do you have for me?" The man smiled back and replied cheerfully, "Ben already told us you were coming. I picked out a Nissan truck. It's a nice clean truck, cabbed, low mileage, powerful 4-wheel drive. It's right here." Isaac looked at the truck, smiled, and said, "It's a great fit. I'll take it." "How much?" The man looked shocked. "I can't make you pay. After all you've done for me." "Nope, can't do that. I'll settle for a discount, but no freebies." "And don't argue." The man sighed. Ben predicted that. "We'll figure something out." Enjoying a cup of tea, Isaac waited for the paperwork to be sorted out. A little while later, he started the truck. He familiarized himself with the layout and operation before heading out to visit his trusted friend. Late in the afternoon, he settled into a comfortable chair with a deep sigh. He said to Anna, now Ben's wife, "It's been a long time since I've sat in a chair like this." Anna smiled at Isaac. She was very fond of the man. Many times she had gone with her husband to the prison to see him, and like her husband, she knew Isaac was innocent. At the same time, she noticed that his face was badly haggard. Many disturbing wrinkles had appeared on it. His eyes were soft and bright before, but now there was sadness in them. Because of his beard, his face was no longer as easy to read as it used to be when she could read him like a book. His manners, however, were still those of a gentleman, courteous, well-placed, and indeed gentle. Isaac brought her flowers. He still remembered Ben and Anna's wedding day, even though he had not been able to attend. She told Isaac that Ben could come at any time and he would pick up the Indonesian food on the way home. They knew it was Isaac's favorite food. Ben entered the hall with great enthusiasm. "What's that ugly sapphire blue truck doing in my driveway?" He laughed and the men embraced. "Welcome back, Isaac. I'm so glad you're here." Isaac just nodded, suddenly at a loss for words. Anna stroked his back and quietly told him, "It's okay. We understand. Take your time." Isaac flinched. He shook his head to dispel the gloom and said, "Sweet home." The spell was broken. "Isaac, what do you want to drink? Beer?" Isaac thought for a moment and replied, "No, just some sparkling water. I haven't had a drop of alcohol in 5.5 years." "I'll keep it up." Anna started to serve dinner, but suddenly stopped with a tray of delicious-smelling food in front of the two hungry men. She smiled and said, "Now that you have my attention, I have something to say. We will dedicate this evening to celebration. Tomorrow you can go off to fight dragons again. Deal?" Both men immediately agreed. It was the signal for a very enjoyable evening. For the first time in almost 7 years, Isaac felt calm and relaxed. At the end of the evening, Ben told Isaac that they had already prepared the guest room for him. Isaac felt a little awkward and said, "This is too much. I can go to a hotel." Anna said in a tone that did not tolerate objections. "I insist. You'll spend the night here. Tomorrow you'll probably want to go look at your house. I don't think you should go alone, so we'll go with you." "That's out of the question, too." Isaac gave in. "I am in your debt. Now I am dead tired. Please show me where I can spend the night." Anna said again in the same tone. "Are you out of your mind? We're your friends, you know. Get that into your thick skull. You damn sure paid for most of this house out of the money from the traffic light project. Ben will show you the way. Tomorrow will be a new day." Much more gently, Anna said to Isaac, "Sleep well, you big guy. Don't forget that we love you too." Isaac didn't sleep well that night. The bed was too soft, it was too quiet. He missed K2's snoring and the noise from the prison, but eventually he fell into a restless sleep. Laura Wenstad watched people pull up to the house at the end of the street. They drove up in 2 cars, stopped at the gate, and got out. 1 woman, 2 men. Since the FBI had used her house as an observation point before the raid, she was wary of strangers showing up. She pulled out the binoculars the FBI agents had forgotten to bring with them and looked around carefully. A man and a beautiful woman were clearly very much in love with each other. They waited until the thin, bearded man got out of his blue truck and looked around carefully. She pointed the binoculars at his face, which had crow's feet visible around his eyes. When he turned to look around, she got a good look at his eyes. She inhaled sharply. They were light brown and reflected intense pain. She also noticed that the pair were looking at the man in his ill-fitting clothes with great compassion. Finally, all three of them walked through the gate and to the front door, whereupon the lone man returned to his truck and picked up a crowbar. Shortly afterward, they entered the house. Laura put down her binoculars and prepared to pick up her son from school. Isaac walked through the ruins of what 6 years ago had been the interior of his house. Now everything around it seemed ruined because of what had happened here. And to Isaac, it was just another building. The furniture was stained, chipped, and damaged beyond recognition. The kitchen was so dirty and broken that it would have to be replaced. There was a foul odor in the bedrooms. In fact, the whole house smelled like a public restroom, and in some places it smelled even worse than a prison. Electrical wires had been cut or ripped out, and the ceiling had been torn down so that the main security system could be shut down. All the electronics, computers, and other valuables were gone, probably stolen. Isaac wondered if he could ever make this place his home again. He left the house again and headed to his truck, where he opened the back to get his stuff out. Yesterday, he had bought 3 folding chairs, a camp bed, a sleeping bag, and other camping supplies like a stove and such. He also bought toiletries, clothes, and towels. After picking up everything he could carry, Isaac began to get it into the house. When Laura returned with Timothy, her 10-year-old son, she was just in time to see Anna, who was asking the sad man something. To the amazement of both women, it was at this point that Isaac finally lost his temper. After assessing the damage to his home, Isaac began to slowly lose his resolve. All that was left of his life before prison was a bare husk, badly tainted by misuse and bad memories. He laid out his bed and kitchen utensils in the cleanest room he could find and was about to rest in the sun when Anna asked softly, "Isaac, is this a good idea? I and Ben too can see that you are very anxious. Please come back with us." That was the proverbial straw. Isaac collapsed into the chair next to the front door that he had just reclined and let go. Sobs shook his body, tears streaming down his beard, seeping through his coarse hair and staining his shirt. He cried out in frustration, pain, and grief, shaking Anna to the core. Ben jumped out of the house and immediately enclosed Isaac in a hug. "It's okay, Isaac, it's okay. We're here to catch you. Just let it all out. I've got your back. Let it all out." "We understand," Ben said softly to the distraught man and whispered softly to Anna himself. "Finally. He's finally showing some emotion." It took Isaac quite a while to come to his senses. He finally hugged his 2 friends and said, "Thank you. I wouldn't have known what to do without you." I'm calm again. The way they treated the house was just unbearable. Anna, still very worried, asked, "Isaac, we should get going. Are you sure you want to stay here? Please come with us." Isaac smiled slyly. "I'm fine now. I need to get a new phone and start taking care of business. This is my house and I'm going to make it my home again. Don't worry, I'll be fine. Now for something more practical. Your phone numbers, please. I only have Ben's office number." The 2 handed Isaac their business cards and silently headed to their car while Isaac went back inside. As they were about to get into the car, Laura approached them. "Good morning, I'm a neighbor. I apologize for the intrusion. Can I ask you something?" Anna looked at the woman. She had a beautiful face despite the worry lines. Framed by a halo of curly light brown hair, she was slightly overweight, but still shapely and moved gracefully. Anna answered a little curtly because of all the emotions she had been going through in the last few hours. "You can ask questions, but I don't know if I can answer them or if I even want to. By the way, my name is Anna and this is Ben. I'm Laura Wenstad and I live there with my 10-year-old son Timothy. I was wondering if your friend is okay? It's been a pretty bad neighborhood lately, so I'm worried about my boy's safety and mine." Ben laughed out loud, but it was Anna who replied, "Laura, your neighborhood has gotten just a heck of a lot better. No, there's nothing wrong with Isaac. He'll get better with time." Laura was not yet relieved. "So he's not dangerous then?" "I'm sorry to ask, but it was so bad." "Isaac? Dangerous?" "No, Laura. No matter what the rumors say. He's not dangerous at all. He's one of the gentlest people I know, and he'll probably be the best neighbor you'll ever have." With those words, Anna got into her car and drove off, leaving the confused woman behind. Isaac was walking through his house. He noticed that the wires in the fuse box had not been cut. Only the fuses were gone, and the small black box hidden in the niche above the door seemed to be untouched. It was the fuse box for the solar panels that powered the backup security system in the house. The other panels powered the system outside, which in turn had been the cause of Peter Ramsday's death. He walked straight into the study that had once been his office, but was now littered with trash, empty cardboard boxes, and the like. His desk still stood in its place against the wall, covered in dirt. Feverishly pushing everything aside, he flipped the desk over with great effort and propped up the base. It came free, and with it the hatch. Behind the hatch was the backup security system, blinking green. Isaac thought, she's still here. This has turned out to be a very worthwhile hobby. Assuming, of course, it's still working. He was pretty sure they hadn't found a single camera or microphone. Otherwise, they would have torn the house apart to find the system. Add a computer or laptop to that list, he thought. Isaac never bothered to take notes. His memory hadn't failed him yet. The afternoon was spent shopping. Phone and ISP. Tablet and laptop. Computers will come later because they can't be charged. Flash drives and a small generator for electricity. Solar panels were not enough to supply his needs. He returned to the house with a truck full of stuff and dinner. After finishing dinner, he pulled out his cell phone and called Ben. "Hey Ben, it's Isaac. Do you have a pen and paper?" Isaac gave Ben his cell number and new email address and asked for a list of ex-conv companies. A few minutes later, he received a reply. Ben could always anticipate Isaac's train of thought and had prepared everything in advance. The next morning, Laura looked out the window and saw her new neighbor sitting in the morning sunshine in a folding chair at a folding table with a laptop and talking on the phone. Laura made inquiries online and was again confused. The man had been in prison for 5.5 years for assaulting and physically harming his wife and daughter. To deserve that kind of punishment, you had to be very cruel to another human being. But this man and woman told me he was harmless, Laura thought, and decided to be cautious. Today she only had Timothy to take care of, since unfortunately for her, she was working part-time. She wished she had more hours, but it was out of her hands. Her employer was very inflexible. She was having breakfast with Timothy when a van pulled up to the house. It said on the side, "Ex-Convict Services." Underneath it was written the following: "We've had a hard time learning to be honest, but now we do honest work at an honest price. Call and a phone number." She saved it to check it online when Tim was in school. 2 men got out of the car and greeted Isaac with smiles and handshakes. They had a thermos flask and a large bag. Isaac laughed and they all made their way into the house. Isaac noticed that the neighbor had been watching him the day before. Now he saw her look again and thought, word will get around soon. Maybe we'd better hold off on the introductions for now. And he began handing out instructions to the men. "I need to clean everything up. We'll start with the kitchen, the bedroom, and my office over there. Everything can be scrapped. If you find anything and don't know what to do with it, just come and ask." That same afternoon, a truck pulled up and unloaded a 40-yard dumpster. A short time later, Laura looked outside again and saw a minivan with the XCOM Services sign on the side. A woman got out of it, looked around, and gave directions to the others. When she finished, she walked to the back of the van and pulled out a large bouquet of flowers, then walked to Laura's front door and rang the bell. Laura opened the door, and the woman handed her the flowers with the words, "Regards, Dr. Isaac, for the inconvenience. And if we're being too loud, just say the word and we'll stop." The woman walked away, leaving Laura with her mouth hanging open. Laura looked over to the other house and saw Isaac sitting at a table next to the front door. He looked up at her and waved. She held out the flowers, waved back, and went inside to find something to put them in. She felt strangely elated. 2 weeks later. 2 dumpsters later, the house was cleared of the past, and Isaac and the contractor had finished drawing up plans to restore the interior. Admittedly, it was far from complete. Only his bedroom and part of the kitchen remained usable. Isaac was sitting at his usual desk near the door when the downpour began. A shelter had been built next to the house, and when it started to rain, he retreated under it, as he liked being out in the fresh air and breathing in the smell of the forest. He was enjoying the sound of the rain on the tarp when he heard the car engine stall. Looking up, he saw that Laura was in a panic. He grabbed his umbrella and walked over to her. "Good afternoon. We haven't been introduced to each other yet. I'm Isaac Manor, your neighbor, as you may have noticed," Isaac said, smiling slightly so as not to give away his remark. "Yes. I'm sorry, I'm in a hurry. I have to pick up Tim, my son, from school." "I'm late as it is, and my car," whispered Laura. "From the sound of it, your car isn't going anywhere. You can take mine if you want, or if you're not afraid of being seen with an ex-con, I can give you a ride." Laura was a little taken aback by Isaac's offer. She thought feverishly, weighing the pros and cons, and finally said, "I'm more afraid to drive that big truck of yours. Would you mind driving it?" "Sure, grab your coat and hop in. I need to lock up." "Maybe you could use some help with the car?" Laura whispered shamefacedly. "I can't afford it. My ex..." Isaac interrupted her before they drove to the school. Neighbor, I said help. You mean help? You know, help. With no strings attached and no payment of any kind. Just a friendly face and a cup of coffee. Sometimes that will be enough. Laura noticed that he addressed her in neighbor, and she felt embarrassed. She said, I'm Laura Wenstad. I apologize for being so rude. Yes, please, if you can run it again. The last word sounded partly hopeful, but also partly apprehensive. Isaac pressed the speed dial button on his phone and put it on speaker mode so Laura could listen in too. Doc, came over the speakers. How are you doing and how can I help you? I'm doing fine, Keith. Could you call Joey and have him check out my neighbor's car? The keys are in the ignition. The car just stalled. We're picking up her little boy. Sure thing, Doc. Anything else? Have Joey call me when he has news, please? I will. And did you know that K2 is scheduled to appear before the parole board next week? Mr. Green has already been informed. Isaac laughed. Thank you. That's good to hear. Another startup. This already feels like a job. I'm going to need an assistant soon, I think. Laura looked at Isaac in confusion. When I try to make an appointment with the garage, I have to wait at least a week. When and how am I going to get my car to this garage so soon? Don't worry about that. Joey's already on his way with the truck. I think. You're their boss? Are they that quick to respond? No. I helped them set up the business. That's all there is to it. Don't try to tell me you haven't looked me and ex-conv up on the internet. Or that you haven't heard the rumors going around about me. But the truth is that Ben Green, you know him, and I founded Izbexcon Investments and ex-conv services to help formerly incarcerated people start their lives over. It's working out very well. That's why I get a little extra service. Laura looked at the man, seeing him in a new light. If only he hadn't mistreated his ex-wife and daughter. Pulling up to the school, Laura got out of the car and waved as she saw Timothy waiting for her. Timothy's face lit up when he saw the car, and he exclaimed, That's our neighbor's truck. Cool. Why is it here? Laura helped Tim into the cab and buckled him in, and she said sadly, Our car broke down. Again. Isaac turned and said, Hi, big boy. I'm Isaac. If your mom doesn't mind, you can call me that too if you want. Now let's get you home. Back in the house, Joey took Isaac aside. Doc, this car is a death trap on wheels. The motor's wrecked, but everything else is worse. What do you want? Isaac thought about what Laura had told him and asked, She can't do without a car. Do you have anything in stock? I have a nice little Nissan Rogue, only it's not a pretty color. She can have it. Should I ask her? No. Just take this one and change it. Send me the bill. I can't have dead neighbors or neighbors with dead kids on my conscience. Joey walked over to Laura and said, Excuse me, ma'am. I need to get your car and ID, please. Laura was close to crying. I need this car. I can't pay for the repairs. Don't worry, ma'am. Doc's already taken care of it. I'll bring a replacement tonight. Laura stammered. Isaac took care of it? He can pay for it? Is he always like this? And call me Laura, please. You have no idea, Madame Laura. He's one of the nicest people I know. Honest, intelligent, and generous. And I know where that little preservation goes. No, Laura, he never asks for anything in return. You better not start a conversation with him because he considers it an insult. That's why everybody goes out of their way to help him with the work that needs to be done. He's still paying whether you want him to or not. And there are a lot of people who owe him. He paused for a second before adding, And I, for one, don't believe for a second that he did this to his ex. I've seen him work out in prison. He just doesn't have it in him. I gotta go, Sorry, Laura. I'll see you after dinner. Meanwhile, Isaac finally found the courage to open the backup hard drives. Plugging them into the laptop, he began to check how long they had been functioning. The first recording started as soon as he had installed and activated the entire rig. He watched in silence as his wife backed away from her wedding vows. A few weeks of recordings later, he saw his discovery and subsequent conversation culminate in a threat as he left and Ramsday arrived an hour later. What followed next nearly opened the gates of hell again. Ramsday calmly explained how to get Isaac to comply. They would be made up at the makeup artists as if they had been mistreated. Lydia would report to the police that they had been attacked and hurt, and Ramsday would take care of the rest. He will get Isaac to comply, after which Lydia will take the statement. What followed was a recording of the makeup artist going about his business and someone named Doc signing some papers. Isaac sat in silence, tears streaming down his face. He felt terribly betrayed. Suddenly he had had enough and quickly scrolled forward through the notes. He stopped when he again saw Ramsday sitting in the house in the condition in which he had found him. Something caught his attention. Something in the body language of the men, including the prosecutor and the judge present, made him play the part. He heard Ramsday say, "No, this man has become a nuisance. He must be stripped of his ability to speak. Forever. Just throw him in the lake with a concrete block around his ankles." That's when Isaac stopped his surveillance. He shut down the hard drives and called the woman at the FBI. It took a while, but when he finally got through and explained what he had witnessed, they arrived very quickly. Isaac had already packed up the 2 discs and told the woman, "I need a certified copy of the records of these dates." He handed her a note with the dates on it and continued, "These records show that I was framed and imprisoned despite my innocence. I'm going to settle some scores." Lydia was busy. She was working for the prosecutor as his secretary assistant, a job Peter had organized. She had managed to survive the whole thing because she had stopped seeing Peter shortly before he went to prison. She felt some guilt towards Isaac, but if Isaac had just given up. Since she had sworn an oath in court, there was no turning back, and she had already paid a heavy price for that. Her daughter barely spoke to her because of that, and also because they manipulated her into cooperating. She was just finishing the letter when the prosecutor and the woman entered the office. "Lydia, could you come into my office for a moment?" As she entered the prosecutor's office, the woman said, "Please close the door and have a seat." On the large television screen set up in front of them, the woman identified herself as Agent Smith of the FBI and showed her identification. She sat down and said, "We are reopening the Isaac Manor case." Lydia turned pale. A lead ball began to form in her stomach. "And this is necessary, why?" Agent Smith continued, "I think you know why we're here, don't you?" "No, why?" a very nervous Lydia asked. "I'll show you some examples of why," Agent Smith replied dryly, and the large screen lit up. Lydia saw herself sitting with Peter Ramsday and heard herself working out a plan to frame Isaac. She lost consciousness. When she regained consciousness, there was a loud noise. Opening her eyes, she saw that she was lying on the floor. A few feet away from her, the prosecutor was wrestling with 2 stout men who were handcuffing him and losing badly to them. With contempt in her eyes, Agent Smith said to him, "You think you're going to get away with this? Or this judge and this probation officer? We have months of footage, including a conspiracy to destroy that you all attended. And it's all perfectly legal because the recording was made in the house, and the owner is the one who gave it to us." A week later, Lydia confessed. Ramsday was visited in his cell and formally charged with crimes sufficient to put him behind bars for more than the rest of his life. Isaac learned that Lydia had been sentenced for making a false statement to the police and perjury. He calmly made it clear that he would ignore anything that might happen to his ex-daughter's mother because it would leave her without a family. He went to Ben and told him that he wanted to scare Lydia to death as retribution. Ben set to work. He said the amount would be small, but he was going to sue Lydia for $100,000 for every year Isaac was in prison. Ramsday, however, was to forfeit the family fortune. He is being sued for $1 million for each year Isaac was in jail and for damages to his home and neighborhood. A lawsuit will also be filed against the city of Denz for compensation for participating in his wrongful imprisonment. City officials were very quick to go along with the settlement. Ramsday, with his exorbitant ego, thought the lawsuit would be a nullity. His lawyer did his job, but spent as little energy on it as possible. He was fed up with the former sheriff's demands. Eventually, the court decided that Isaac's claim was valid, and the sheriff did lose his fortune. It helped that the money was going into Isaac and Ben's Uzbekistan Investments Trust Fund. Lydia was really scared to death of Isaac's lawsuit. She was in jail. She no longer had a job. Her house would be foreclosed on because she would no longer be able to pay her mortgage, and where would she find $550,000? She wasn't abused or mistreated in prison. In some ways, it was even worse. Her cellmates completely ignored her. They turned away when she tried to speak. She had her own cell because no one wanted to be in her neighborhood and preferred to sleep on the ground elsewhere. Lydia heard talk of an investment program, and when she asked what it was, one of the guards cynically said that many prisoners owed her for dragging her ex-husband into prison. Otherwise, the Uzbekistan funds would never have been established. In her misery, she forgot this again. Shortly thereafter, Ramsday had a fit when he learned that Isaac had been sued for $5.5 million and another $500,000 for repairs. He screamed that he would kill Isaac and send the 2 women to a Russian brothel. Shortly after that night, he had visitors again. This time, they were not so affectionate, and Ramsday continued to scream, but now in pain. Isaac had been out of prison for a year. K2 had joined him in the free world, and they had become fast friends. Isaac's house had been completely renovated and had regained its former glory. However, its decorations were still minimal. Meanwhile, he silently bought up every house that came up for sale in the cul-de-sac. That night he went to bed, but after a few minutes he had to close the window because of the terrible storm that had broken over the land. He looked out, shook his head, and looked out again. He saw Laura and Tim huddled in the doorway, soaking wet and shivering. He was angry. He grabbed the 2 raincoats the workers sometimes used and ran downstairs, ignoring the fact that he himself was soaked. "What are you thinking of?" he shouted. "You're catching your death. Put this on and come up to the house." Laura seemed about to refuse, but glancing at Isaac, changed her mind. When they reached Isaac's house safely, she looked guiltily at the ground and said quietly, "I'm sorry." I panicked and wasn't thinking. Isaac immediately diffused the situation and replied softly, "I'm sorry," I yelled. "That's what worrying about people does to me." "What happened?" "The fuse box blew." "Good. I'll have someone take a look at it tomorrow. You can stay here tonight. I'll change the sheets on the bed and you and Tim can sleep there. I'll sleep on the bed tonight. Tomorrow we'll look around your house. And please, no arguments." Isaac found some t-shirts, showed Laura to the bathroom, and told her and Tim to take a hot shower. He took his bed into the study to rest as he suddenly heard a quiet sound. Turning around, he saw Laura standing in the doorway. To hide his embarrassment, he asked a little gruffly, "Is there anything you need that I can help you with?" "Yes." "You're a big dummy." "I need to thank you," said Laura, blushing. She kissed Isaac gently on the cheek and asked, "Why on earth would your ex dump you? And also in the way she did?" "I have no idea." "Anyway, I left her behind knowing she was behind bars." Isaac stood up and said, "I'm ready to tell you the reading version." Isaac told her how he had designed and installed redundant security systems as a hobby and hid them so well that criminals couldn't find them. The outside system was accessible via the internet, that's what happened at the jail, and was the demise of the merchants and the sheriff. The other system was hidden in the house and inaccessible to Isaac, and frankly, he expected it to be destroyed and didn't think much of it until he saw his office was virtually untouched and only used as a dumping ground. "On the hard drives I found, among other things, evidence of my innocence," he concluded. Finished, he sent Laura to bed. Tomorrow was going to be a busy day. The next morning, a contractor came in to inspect the damage to Laura's house. K2 came with him, and Isaac introduced Laura to Fabian. Her small hand was completely hidden in his large paw. Timothy came in next, and they shook hands as well. Fabian tucked his knees up and said, "Careful, that hurts. You're stronger than you think." The ice was broken. They went to the house for coffee, where Fabian whispered to Laura, "Don't drink his coffee without water." Laura giggled back, "I know. I was shocked this morning at what he calls coffee." The contractor returned with bad news. Laura's house was practically uninhabitable due to neglect. Laura began to cry. Isaac got straight to the point. "K2, can you put a lock on my bedroom and give Laura the keys?" He looked at Laura and asked, "Who's your landlord?" "My ex," Laura hiccuped, "and he won't sell it to me." Isaac looked back at K2. "Take care of that too, okay?" "Good, and have it forensically examined before you offer that asshole a price." Laura looked surprised and asked, "Why the lock?" "Because according to the neighbors, I still have a bad attitude toward women." "Until what time do you have to work?" "I don't have to work today. They pay me a pittance and demand 150%. On what they pay me, I barely make ends meet and I can't find another job again because of my ex." "What kind of work do you do?" "I studied organization and business. I specialized in both, and now I'm a secretary in a pool with other secretaries and those willing to provide more services." Isaac pondered as he walked. He really, really liked this woman who was fighting with all her might for her son, constantly being sabotaged by her ex-husband, and he needed a secretary. The workload was increasing rapidly, and he wanted more free time for himself, so he asked, "I need someone to help me, full-time. The workload is growing over my head, and if I don't keep up with it, I will become a prisoner of my own trust. Would you be willing to work for me? Here in this house, or even from your own home when it's renovated?" Laura blushed and felt warm. Stammering, she replied, "I don't have any references, and I need to be able to take care of Timothy." Sensing Laura's agony, he gave her another nudge. "If you work in this house, I'll set aside a room for Tim. He'll have his own little office, and I'll help him with his homework when needed." Isaac waited a moment and said softly, "Go ahead. Make a move. It will free you up, and it will be good for me too. I'll be working with someone I already know and like." "You like me?" asked Laura, very surprised. "Why else would I care about you so much? If you were just a neighbor, you'd get a room at a long-stay hotel. Now please say yes." Anna and Ben will decide the details with you. Laura jumped into Isaac's arms, wrapped her arms around him and kissed his cheek. When do I start? Now? I suddenly feel like decorating the house and doing lots of other things. I hope you'll be staying here while the house is being remodeled? Yes, and Timothy will be happy too, but I need to quit my old job first. Can I use your phone? Meanwhile, Timothy had discovered an old robot that Isaac had made as a hobby. It was one of the few intact things they had found in the house. He ran over to Isaac with it in his hands. Tim exclaimed, "What is this?" "Who built this?" Isaac smiled happily at the boy, replying, "I did." "Let's find batteries and a remote control and you can play outside with it." 10 minutes later, the little robot, accompanied by the joyful shouts of an 11-year-old boy, pulled into the driveway. Along the way, Isaac arranged a babysitter for Tim, and an hour later, he and Laura were on their way to a large shopping center. "I quit my job. They weren't happy and offered me a raise and more work," Laura said. "Ha," Isaac replied, pulling out into the parking lot. "I hope it's too little and too late. What are they offering?" Laura looked at the man beside her and noticed a glimmer of apprehension on his face. She thought, does he really care? She felt herself getting warm and for a very long time, involuntarily a little moist in a very different place than her mouth. Laura decided to tease him a little and asked, "What do you have to offer?" Isaac didn't miss a beat. $4,000 a month clean for starters, free rent, and my undying gratitude. "Deal!" exclaimed Laura cheerfully. "But free rent? You haven't got a house yet. Don't underestimate Fabian's negotiating skills. And no, he will really ask nicely." 2 weeks later, Laura was amazed at how fast and efficient the ex-conv crews were. She was already moving some of her belongings back into her now rent-free home, but she did so with some sadness. Laura was growing more and more attached to this sometimes gloomy man. Their working relationship was firmly established. The day began with an hour-long cardio and fitness workout. It was a regimen Isaac had adopted in prison under Fabian's guidance, and as a result, he had become a very fit man and wanted to keep it that way. Laura had struggled with the workouts at first, but she had already noticed a difference in her condition. The work, she found, was challenging at times, but like the workouts, she was learning to cope with it as well. A few nights later, Tim announced that he had a new math teacher. Laura didn't pay much attention to it, only half listening to her son's happy chatter. She was thinking about Isaac and whether there was any way to show her feelings for him when she noticed the car in her driveway. She wasn't expecting visitors and watched it for a few moments. The driver didn't get out, but then her attention was caught by Timothy, who was enthusiastically talking about how he was building his own robot, with Isaac's help, of course. Half an hour later, she looked out again and saw that the car was still standing there and the driver was still sitting in it. Wondering why this was so, she went in search of it, walked up to the driver's side and knocked on the window. Thomasina Manor, aka Tommy, had gotten a job as a math teacher at a school in the neighborhood where she used to live. When her mother was sentenced to prison, also for perjury, Tommy had to stop studying artificial intelligence and get a job. There, she heard Tim talking enthusiastically about building a robot and felt a prick of jealousy. She used to do it with her father before her mother went crazy and got involved with the creep. Later, when she was writing invitations to parent-teacher conferences, she found Tim's address and her world went downhill. Could it be my dad is helping Tim? Did my dad go back to that house after everything that had happened there? She had to find out. An hour later, she was sitting in the car with a small pair of binoculars, watching my dad sitting in front of his house. She was shocked at how much older he looked compared to the morning she had left for school and said goodbye to him for the last time. She couldn't hold back her tears, but she was afraid to go near him. One day, her mother wrote Isaac a letter right after his release to ask for his forgiveness and to ask if they could be friends in the future. Isaac's reply came through his lawyer to her lawyer. "Only if you give me back 5.5 years of my life. Otherwise, stay away." Suddenly, there was a knock on the window. Tommy was brought out of her reverie and tearfully rolled down the window. The woman looked at her and said, "You're certainly not all right. Come inside to calm down a bit. You can't drive now." Tommy, losing her balance for a moment, allowed the woman to lead her inside. There she was met by Tim. "Hello, Miss Tommy. Why have you come to visit us?" Laura was taken aback, but kept her composure. "I'm Laura Wenstad, and you are?" "Thomasina Manor. I teach Tim math at school. Please call me Tommy." A light bulb went on in Laura's head. "Manor? You mean?" Tommy nodded and replied sadly, "Yes, my father. I haven't seen him in over 6 years," and slowly sank to the floor. Laura picked her up and sat her down on the couch. She told Tim to get some water and then added, "Tim, please go to your room so we can talk." Tim obeyed immediately and Laura turned to Tommy. We need to talk. But first, you're in no condition to drive, so you're going to stay here tonight. If there's one thing I learned from your father, it's to help when help is needed. Tommy breathed a sigh of relief. She finally had someone to talk to, albeit a stranger. She looked questioningly at Laura, and Laura understood her question. She said, I know almost everything. The only thing your father never mentioned was your part in the affair, only that you were adopted by Peter Ramsday. Tommy shook her head vehemently and replied, I was never adopted. I refused, and eventually they gave up. When I realized what they did to my father, I stopped talking to my mother. I left that house when I turned 18. I couldn't call it home anymore. Shortly after that, Asshole and my mother separated. Laura had to digest this information. Isaac was convinced his daughter was adopted. After a while, she said, I think we have to find a way to convince your father to let you back into his life. I want him to be as happy as possible. He still has a picture of you in his desk drawer, you know? The tone with which Laura made her little speech made Tommy look at her closely and realize the truth. She touched Laura's hand and said softly, We have known each other only a short time, but one thing is obvious to me. You love him, don't you? A depressed Laura blushed and with sadness in her voice replied, Yes, but I don't know if I have any chance with him. Maybe I can help you if I tell you what I know about my dad from my own experience and from what my mom told me before she got brain damaged by that asshole sheriff. What do you mean? My mom told me once that underneath that shell and shine is a very shy man who doesn't want to impose himself on a woman in any way. The more he likes her or loves her, the more he keeps his distance. Laura suddenly perked up. Really? He's attentive? Do you suddenly find flowers on your desk? Tim tells me you've been shopping. You looked at something you liked in the store and suddenly it was delivered the next day? Laura could only confirm all of this. He loves you. Don't worry. My mother also told me that she had to catch up with him quite aggressively. Please take care of my father. I desperately want him to be happy. I want to see him so badly I can taste it, but I don't have those 5 years for him. That was his demand. When can you give me my 5 years back? Tommy's tears threatened to spill over again. Laura was having a very bad night. After a very emotional evening, a stranger had slept in her house and told her how the man she had fallen in love with was structured. Now that she understood a little of how Isaac was structured, she needed to find a way to break through his shield. She tried to devise a plan, coming up with a few scenarios, but just as quickly discarded them. Eventually, she decided to start dressing more provocatively. How she wanted to reunite father and daughter was not an option at the moment. Isaac was already working out when Laura walked into his small gym. He was pleasantly surprised looking at her. She was wearing her usual sweatpants, but the loose t-shirt had been replaced by a tight top showing off her cleavage. Watching her more closely, he noticed that she was starting to tighten up and had lost a little weight. Halfway through the workout, Laura decided to put Tommy's assertion to the test. So she asked, Isaac, can I have the day off? We're working our asses off. I need to relax a little, and I need some new clothes, so I'd like to go shopping today. Tim's at school until 5. Isaac exclaimed enthusiastically, That's a great idea. Do you mind if I join you? I want to spend the day away from the office too. That was exactly what Laura wanted to hear, but she pretended to mull it over. She noticed that the expression on Isaac's face immediately changed from pleased to somewhat concerned, and quickly replied, I'd like that very much. Some friendly company. You can help me choose. Are you sure? I won't take offense if you want to go alone. I'm also your employer after all, Isaac said, giving her a way out. Yes, you are, but you're also a dear friend, she replied, and kissed him lightly on the cheek. But there's one hard rule. What rule? No talking about work, Laura replied with a slight smirk. Seeing Isaac smile, Laura thought, mission accomplished. Laura thought happily. Now let's finish the training. Yes, boss, joked Isaac. An hour later, the three of them were on the car ride, first to Tim's school, and after dropping Tim off, to the mall. They arrived early, so Isaac and Laura took their time drinking coffee before going shopping for Isaac. Laura firmly told him that he should get rid of his convict image and start wearing clothes that would present him in a better light. After Isaac was secured, Laura began to have fun. She got rid of what she called Mama's fat. Also, since she didn't have to worry so much about how to get through the week financially, she became more confident and relaxed. Turning sideways, she admired her new look in the fitting room mirror and smiled. She found the other dress very pretty, but it was beyond her budget. Sighing, she returned it to the rack. She then went to the sportswear department and completely missed Isaac's gesture to the saleswoman. After lunch, they had a friendly argument about who would pay the bill. Of course, Laura lost. As they walked back to the car, laden with bags and boxes, Laura never noticed the extra bag between the rest of their purchases, along with a bottle of her favorite perfume. At home, Laura unpacked and discovered the purchased items. Tommy had hit the mark. She felt herself getting warm. I really have a chance, she thought. The next day, she went to the gym wearing another top. By the third day, she was getting desperate. By the end of her workout, her eyes filled with red tears. Isaac, taking one look at her face, was immediately at her side and asked, "What's the matter, Laura?" "You're crying. Is there anything I can do to help?" "In for a penny, in for a pound," Laura thought. "I have a problem with a man." "What, is he hurting you?" "In a way. The problem is that I love him. I love him, and I'm actually in love with him." Laura saw Isaac swallow and turn pale, but continued. "The thing is, he's not responding to my advances. Now I don't know what to do. Do you have any ideas?" Isaac stammered. "Laura, you've come to the wrong place for advice. But I'll give it a try. If this man is so dumb-headed, knock him on the head. He will be extremely stupid if he ignores you. You are smart, beautiful, and have a big heart. Be as direct as you can. He'll come to his senses." Isaac and Laura sat on the exercise bench. Blushing, she said, "I'm going to be as clear as I can be. Isaac, are you going to make love to me here or in your bed?" To say Isaac was confused is an understatement. He stammered, "What, you? You mean me?" "Yes, you. You stupid man. You. Laura, are you in love with me?" "Really?" Her nod and smile made him smile back as he realized the truth. "Ooh, that makes me so happy. Laura, please believe me, I love you too. I've loved you since you were sitting in bed in the doorway. Then why didn't you tell me?" "You fool." "I couldn't. I am your employer and I am your master, Laura. When I helped you the first time, I promised. No obligation and no payment. Just a friendly face and a cup of coffee once in a while is enough. Remember? Sometimes you're too decent for your own good. Now that the problem is solved, the question remains, here or in the bedroom?" At the same moment, they ran to the bedroom. Much later, the happy couple were lying on the crumpled bed. They had just taken a nap, and Laura was coaxing Isaac to get up. "Isaac, it's time to pick Tim up from school. So one of us needs to go take a shower. I'll shower first and go get Tim." When she pulled up to the school, Tim was already waiting for her in the company of Tommy. She walked over and sent Tim into the car. Tommy smirked slightly and pronounced, "Looks like you got your man, or is it the other way around? You were just walking around a little funny." Laura laughed out loud and purred, "Thanks for the little bit of information about your father." You were so right. The window of opportunity for Laura opened 6 weeks later. As usual, they practiced in the mornings, but Laura had no energy and it was noticeable. Isaac began to watch her more closely. Later that morning, she refused a cup of coffee, saying she preferred tea, and when someone walked by with a cheddar sandwich, she had to hurry to the bathroom. Seeing this, Isaac realized he'd had enough. When Laura returned from her surprise visit, he told her he'd take the day off because he still needed to visit a client, although the latter was a big white lie. As soon as Laura disappeared into her house, he drove off in his car to a mall where there was a good jeweler. The next morning, Laura felt a little better, but excused herself from her workout, citing that a virus had caught up with her. She got a good night's sleep and showed up at her office at 9:30. She expected to see Isaac at his desk, but someone told her he was in the workshop. That was odd. He always goes there in the afternoon. And he didn't even say hello. "What's going on here?" she thought, and walked over to her desk. On the desk, she found 2 small numbered boxes, numbers 1 and 2. Opening the first one, she found in it a beautiful antique pocket watch with a gold chain. Underneath the watch was a note. She unfolded the paper and read, "Time flies by and life is too short to waste. The employer is contemplating whether his PA will let him propose to her. He believes that she is beautiful on the outside as well as the inside, and that she will be even more beautiful in the future." Laura felt everything warm inside her. With trembling hands, she opened the second gift. Inside, she found 3 different pregnancy tests. Now she could definitely feel the heat spreading through her body. Pregnant. And Isaac was the first to notice. They had completely forgotten about contraception. She thought warmly. He seemed to accept it readily, maybe even love it. Laura was still confused, and her thoughts were running in circles. Happiness, anxiety, amazement. Everything was fighting for a place in her mind. She stood there until she heard a quiet cough. Turning around, she saw Isaac standing in the doorway. She blushed again, to the depths of her cleavage. She replied modestly, "Yes, my employer is allowed to make the offer." Silently, he took her hand and led her outside. There, in the sunshine, he asked her loud and clear, "Laura Wenstad, will you do me the honor of becoming my wife?" "Yes, you idiot. You didn't need to ask formally." I would have said yes anyway. That's when she realized that about 100 men and women had witnessed this little scene. When he carefully slipped the palladium engagement ring with the emerald-cut diamond on her finger, there were loud cheers and clapping. "My God," she exclaimed. "It's beautiful." Tim approached her with a bottle of champagne and 2 flutes. Isaac said to the bride-to-be, "I've bet on yes, as you can see." Isaac then turned to the others and said, "All present may have a glass in the garden." When the feast was over, Isaac and Laura went to Isaac's house. Laura was tired of all the emotions, congratulations, and handshakes. They made themselves comfortable in the living room and looked out the large window at the forest. After sitting like that, silently enjoying each other's company and touch, Isaac asked, "Where do you want to live? Can you live here, in the ruins of my old life? Should I build us a new house? This house needs serious repairs as it is, especially when you find yourself pregnant. What do you want with your old house?" "That's a lot of questions. I like this house. It's spacious, roomy, and associated with many happy memories. If I can take part in the renovation, let's stay here, please. As for my old house, it's yours, so why ask me? When Fabian bought it, I decided to put the papers in your name. It's up to you to decide, but I'd hate to involve unknowns. So I'm asking if you know anyone who likes living there. If you want to sell it, I'll just buy it from you, and you'll just have to decide." Isaac smiled. A chance, a big chance, flashed through Laura's mind. But it's an easy one. Right now, Isaac would give his consent immediately. If I asked him to jump off the cliff at this moment, he would do it without hesitation. "You don't want him to feel manipulated, do you?" Her heart raced, but she replied outwardly calmly, "I'll have to think about it. Maybe I know someone." The next day after lunch, Tim was excused from class, and Isaac and Laura decided to have an early lunch, pick Tim up, and head to the park. Isaac talked about what he wanted to change in and around the house. He wanted to add a pool with jets so he could relax or swim properly, and a balcony with a door to the bedroom. He suggested building an attached cabin for Tim, first with a door to the main house and then with its own entrance. There were a few other things, but nothing substantial. When everything was ready, Isaac asked if Laura already had a candidate for her house. Laura nodded affirmatively and took a deep breath. "Yes, there is, and I really hate to offer it to you. Can you promise me that you will listen to me first, think about it, and only then answer? Please trust me on this?" Isaac immediately felt apprehensive, but replied, "Yes, I can do that. I will listen first, think first, and promise not to snap, but I suspect I won't like it." Laura replied, "I think when you can step over your own shadow, you'll like it and make you very happy. Right now, it's nothing. You know Tim has a new math teacher, don't you? And he really likes her." Isaac only nodded. "She desperately needs somewhere to live. The house she's living in now is in foreclosure, and she has to move out within 2 weeks." Isaac asked, "And what's the problem?" "Her name is Thomasina Manor. And I emphasize Manor, not Ramsday, as you always thought." Isaac sat stunned, mouth open but unable to make a sound. Finally, almost exploding, he asked, "What?" Laura intervened. "You promised." "You're right," he muttered. Laura took Isaac's hands and in a soft voice began to explain. "She never knew what they were doing to you. She thought the makeup artist was working on her portfolio. Her testimony was falsified by Ramsday. Every time she went to the authorities to complain and wanted to see you and release you, she was denied because of Ramsday. The judge was on Ramsday's payroll, and before you were sentenced, even your ex-wife thought it was only to force you into submission." As Laura spoke, Isaac's face turned different colors, red, purple, white, and when she finished, he was ashy. She shook his hands and looked at his face and saw tears streaming down his cheeks. Isaac whispered, "Poor thing. What do we do now?" Confusion reigned in his mind. All he could think was, almost 7 years lost. Laura kissed him gently and lovingly to bring Isaac out of his personal hell. Finally, he snapped back. "Ramsday will pay for this. And it's going to be a very big bill. Don't do anything stupid, please? I don't want the father of our child. Yes, all 3 tests were positive. That was another thing I wanted to tell you. Ugh, where was I? Oh, the father of our child is back in jail. That's not going to happen. I'm not going to do anything illegal with that bastard. But what are we going to do about Tommy? Leave that to me. Can you get home in an Uber? I can do better than that. The contractor will drive me back. He has to start with a quote for the work on the house. If you agree with them." Laura smiled. Your ideas sounded great. I trust you completely. Now I'm going to go pick up Tim and Tommy. As she pulled up to the school, Tim came running in and Laura whispered, Can you call Miss Mana? Tim ran off again and returned a few minutes later with Tommy, who looked a little worried. To ease the tension, Laura smiled as happily as she could and purred, I have a house for you. Really? And I can afford it? Laura replied, Oh yes, easily. Hop in and we'll take a look. Now. Yes. Why not? Tommy made up her mind. She couldn't help but trust this woman and got into the car. Laura drove home. Tommy was puzzled as they pulled up in front of Laura's house. When Tim jumped out of the car to go inside, Laura said, Here's your new house. Tommy was totally confused. What the hell, it's your house? No. I'm getting married. And you can afford it. Seriously. All you have to do is meet the owner. Tommy was wary. I'm not going to sleep with him, she shouted. Laura laughed loudly. No, dear, it wouldn't occur to him. Tommy was still stunned. She asked, When will I get to meet your mysterious host and when can I move in? Laura glared. Now and tomorrow. For now, we will only need to walk to the house next door. By the way, Tim and I and little Bambino will be living there too. Finally, the quarter fell. Laura took great pleasure in looking at Tommy. Her mouth opened, closed again, and opened only to utter an incomprehensible sound. She went from white to red and was finally able to stammer out, My. Your father. Yes. And he really wants to meet you. We're getting married because your younger half-brother or sister is on the way. Laura chirped happily. Tommy experienced a whole gamut of emotions. Jubilation at having a suitable place to live, happiness at being able to see her father, and surprise at becoming a big sister. But there was also excitement because she didn't know what to say to her father. In the nearly 7 years he had been gone, she had rehearsed entire speeches and thought up scenarios for their reunion, but now she couldn't think of a single one. Laura took Tommy's hand and gently nudged her toward the house she now called home in charge. Tim ran ahead and, as usual, knocked loudly on the door. Isaac opened it and said a little nervously, Hey, big boy. Are you alone? Tim jumped up and replied, No, Mom is coming with my math teacher. She's going to live in our house. Really? Isaac looked at the two women and said, Wow, what a sight. Two of the most beautiful and important women in my life side by side. When the women appeared on his doorstep, he whispered quietly with a tremor in his voice, Tommy, you have become such a beautiful woman. Can I give you a hug? Tommy almost jumped into his arms with a cry, Daddy! They stood for a long time, savoring the moment, until Laura called them into the house. Once inside, Tommy looked at her father carefully. He had changed a lot. He looked even older than he did through the binoculars. That was to be expected, but he seemed to have aged much more than 7 years. Wrinkles had appeared on his face, especially around his eyes, giving him a melancholy look. She remembered that her father had always seemed a little soft around the waist. Now she noticed that there was no softness at all. Skin, muscle, and bone. Oh, Dad, I'm so sorry. Laura interrupted their tearful reunion. Perhaps you'd better continue your acquaintance somewhere private while I start dinner. I take it you want to stay for dinner too, Tommy? Tommy walked over to Laura and hugged her tightly. Thank you so much. I'm so happy now, and it's all thanks to you, Mom. Laura smiled with wet eyes. I will do anything to make my Isaac happy. Now go and talk to Daddy. Isaac and Tommy made themselves comfortable in the living room, where there were comfortable chairs and side tables in one corner. Isaac offered Tommy a soft drink and said, There was no alcohol in prison except what they made themselves. I never touched it, and when I got out I figured I could do without it. But I don't mind if the others drink. Tommy nodded and she replied, I don't know where to begin. Are you really offering me Laura's house? I can think of a few complications. Isaac laughed softly. I've thought of that. The only problem that might arise is the restraining order she has against me. I realize she has no place to live when she gets out of jail, and you have plenty of room. Tommy, listen carefully. This is your home because you are Laura's tenant, and as such I can't forbid you from having guests and I won't. But, and this is the only but, your mother must keep her distance from me. I don't want her anywhere near me. That means in my garden and at my front door. She is not welcome here. I will ignore her when I see her in the street. If you can live with that, the rest of the question went unspoken. I understand, Dad. It's only until she's back on her feet again. There are other reasons I don't want Mom to live with me indefinitely. Isaac raised an eyebrow but remained silent. Tommy took a deep breath and purred. I have a boyfriend, and they're very serious. I need space and privacy, and really, we haven't gotten along since she went crazy over that jerk. I hope Mom finds a job and a place to live as soon as possible. Isaac picked up on that thought and replied, Is she still working as an accountant? Maybe I can help her with a job. She should have enough money to pay her rent. I paid almost $500,000 to get rid of her. There should be something left over from that. No, Dad. She was plucked by that asshole, and now that asshole is completely broke. Last I heard, he had to spend his entire fortune on compensation. And yes, she's still a CPA, and since he's been an asshole, she's also a paralegal. Karma can be a bitch. I'll try to get her a job, but don't tell her about it. I assume you're visiting her in prison? Tommy nodded affirmatively, at which point Laura announced that dinner was ready. A few weeks later, Isaac and his daughter were chatting in the living room of the big house. He asked Tommy, When was the last time you visited your mother? I think it was shortly before I came to live here. Remember, this is your mother. You have her alone, so please keep in touch with her. You may regret it if you don't. Before Tommy could respond, there was a loud knock on the door. Isaac said, It's Fabian. He's the only one who knocks like that, and went to the door. Tommy heard the rumble with which the huge man said to Isaac, Doc, let me introduce you to my son Julian. Hearing this, she ran out of the room to Laura. Meanwhile, Fabian continued, He makes me proud of him. Even though his father was in prison, he became a teacher. When he told me he wanted to see you, I thought I'd like to see you too. Julian, with his beet red head, stammered, It's a pleasure to meet you, sir. My father has told me a lot about you. But actually, I've come to ask you something. Okay, ask away. There was a very awkward silence. Julian stared at his feet, then said quietly, In private, please. Isaac led him into the den and found that Tommy had already left. He directed Fabian's son to a chair and, sitting him down, asked, What can I do for you, Julian? Julian hurriedly mouthed, Sir, I want to ask Thomasina to marry me. We have been lovers for a long time, and I think it is time to make an honest woman of her. With your blessing. That is what I have come for, sir, to ask for your blessing. Isaac smiled from ear to ear. He called out, Thomasina Manor. I know you're listening, so come out of hiding and introduce yourself. Tommy ran into the den smiling. Yes, Dad? This nice young man wants to marry you and asks for my blessing. Shall I give it? Yes, please, Papa. I would like that very much. Isaac rose from his chair and held out his hand. You have my blessing, son. Take good care of my daughter. It's time to celebrate. Isaac headed to follow Julian into the living room when Tommy detained him. Dad? Yes, dear. Julian doesn't know yet. I'll tell him in a minute, but right now we're in a bit of a hurry. You're going to be a grandfather in about 7 months. The doctor confirmed it this morning. Tommy girl, you make me so happy I could burst. Do you want a double wedding? With Laura and me together? That would be great. We'll discuss it later when Fabian's gone. They walked to the living room, where Laura was grinning, and Fabian looked completely unconcerned with what was going on. When Isaac sat down, Julian said to Fabian with a very big and happy smile, Daddy, may I introduce you to my future wife? This is Thomasina. Mr. Manor has just given us his blessing. May we have yours as well? Fabian's face reflected amazement. He was completely stunned. He said, Yes, of course, if that's what you want. Isaac put his arm around him. Come on, big friend. We are now a family, and not just in one sense. Who would have thought it, huh? Across from them, Julian looked puzzled. What? Tommy said to Julian with a very happy face. Yep, you're going to be a dad. When we decided to stay together, we also decided we wanted to have kids while we were still young, so we stopped using condoms. Julian's first salvo was a direct hit. So, Mr. Small, you will have a daughter and a grandchild. 2 weeks later, Lydia sat in front of her daughter. You look amazing, Tommy. Yes, Mom. I have a place to live and I'm going to get married. Life is treating me well. Oh, that's good. Where do you live and when is the wedding? Tommy gave the address and enjoyed the look on her mother's face when she recognized it. It's near the house where Isaac used to live. How can you afford it? It's next to Dad's. He still lives there. I found him and we were reunited. Lydia, despite herself, became curious. How did you find him? Just luck. His roommate's son, Laura, was a student of mine. He showed me the little robot and told me he had made it with his neighbor. When I noticed the address, I went to see what it looked like. Laura saw me following her and came out and asked me what I was doing. I explained, and a few weeks later she and I were in touch. To answer your question, I will say that my father owns all 5 houses in this neighborhood. That's why I can afford it. Lydia fell silent, trying to comprehend the information she had received. She asked timidly, When is the wedding? We're waiting for you to get out of jail, and since you're still officially my mother, you're invited." Lydia perked up. She would see Isaac again, and he couldn't turn down his daughter's wedding. Maybe she would try to talk to him. And who knows? She asked her daughter, "Can I stay with you when I'm released?" "I have nowhere to go. The house is sold." "I need a new job too." Tommy took a deep breath. She didn't want Lydia to know that her father had already taken care of the job. She simply said, "You can live with me until the baby comes. By then I'll need a room. As for work, have you talked to XCOM services? They specialize in helping convicts get jobs or businesses." "Your baby? Are you expecting a child? Why didn't you tell me that right away? From the way you're talking to me, I think you're still mad at me. Can't you forgive me?" Tommy was stunned for a moment. Was she really that stupid? She replied without holding back her anger, "Mom, it's only because Dad tells me that I only have one mom and that I have to keep in touch. Otherwise, you would have seen me the last time you went to jail. You cost me more than 6 precious years of my life with Dad. And why is that? Because you were too selfish and too cowardly to do the right thing. And while we're on the subject, I talked to my dad's girlfriend a lot. About everything. I really don't understand how you fell for that asshole when you had my dad. How could you do that?" It was Lydia's turn to be stunned by such an onslaught. She remained silent. It was clear to her that she was going to have to deal with serious issues with Tommy. It also came as a shock to her that Isaac had a girlfriend. She had never thought that Isaac could switch to another life so quickly after his release. She also didn't expect him to go to live in the house that had brought him so much misery. Knowing that it had been trashed since she had visited there once after her breakup with Peter, she also wondered where he had gotten so much money to renovate it. When Tommy left and Lydia returned to her cell, Tommy's harsh words were still echoing in her head. She had left Peter almost immediately when it became clear that she had been played, and the money had suddenly disappeared. He wanted Isaac out of the way, not only because he needed her, but because he needed a place for his smuggling activities. Lydia had tried to be a good mother to Tommy, and had thought that Tommy's almost hostile attitude toward her had to do with her puberty. Now she realized how much she had hurt her girl, who seemed to be much more attached to her father than she had thought. Tommy's words had deeply wounded her soul. Lydia was angered to the core that Tommy was pregnant and hadn't told her right after she announced that she was getting married. Lydia realized that she had a very deep and wide chasm to cross before Tommy would open up to her again. Lydia sat in her room at Tommy's house. It wasn't a warm welcome, but it was a welcome. Tommy didn't hug her, but at least he said, "Welcome back, Mom. You're our guest. May I introduce you to Julian Small, my future husband and father of our child?" The introductions were made, and Tommy continued, "You are welcome to use everything in this house. While you're looking for a job, you can use the laptop I put in your room. Have you contacted XConv yet?" Lydia looked down at her feet and replied, "I tried. But for some reason, they weren't interested in me. It seemed like I was banned. In fact, the whole time I was there, no one wanted anything to do with me. I'll ask Dad." "Maybe he knows why you weren't contacted," Julian remarked. "It is he, among others, who has the final say in hiring people through XCOM services. He also, on Isaac's behalf, made it clear that you would be treated respectfully and no harm would come to you. Otherwise, you would be in for a very rough ride. Isaac is highly respected. What does your father have to do with my husband, my ex-husband? Mom, I know what you're thinking. Don't even try it. Dad wants nothing to do with you." "Nothing, you understand?" Tommy interrupted her angrily, saying it more like an order than a question. Julian continued to tell the story of Isaac and Fabian. Another piece of the puzzle fell into place for Lydia. That's why it was easy for her, as easy as it could ever be. She decided to relax for a while. But deep down, she wanted her life back with Isaac. Tommy knocked and informed Lydia that she had a visitor. A startled Lydia went downstairs. A huge man stood in the hallway. Julian was tall, but this man was as tall as him and twice as wide. Gora turned around and introduced himself in a low, ringing voice. "Good afternoon. I am Fabian Small. Julian tells me you have not received a response to your request for a job?" "That's right. I realized I was to be avoided like the plague by everyone." "You were to be avoided?" "That's right. Your association with Peter Ramsday puts you at risk. That's why I asked Isaacs to speak out on the matter. He felt a responsibility. He was responsible for the evidence that eventually led to your imprisonment. When Ramsday found out who had delivered the evidence to bring about his ultimate demise, he started threatening you and my future daughter-in-law. So we had to put you in some sort of isolation. Now I hear that you are looking for work. Is that correct?" "Yes, I was a CPA and worked as a paralegal until we were both arrested." Paralegal accountant. Good, good. I run a company that provides security services and security systems. My company and trust is Bexcon Investments needs an accountant. I can offer you a decent salary. We hire you for a month, after which if you prove capable and compatible with our staff, you will be given a certain contract and we will provide you with accommodation, rent-free. There is one condition. Under no circumstances are you to attempt to contact Isaac. I am your immediate supervisor. Can you agree to that? I have no choice, do I? I agree. Of course you have a choice. You can refuse. Lydia was silent for a moment. She was shocked at how much Isaac had shut her out, even though he cared about her immediate needs. She asked Fabian about it. The answer is simple. It's what we try to provide for all former prisoners. The only exception is that Isaac will have nothing to do with you. For obvious reasons. Lydia was shocked again, this time from the direct, almost hostile answer. She said with a tremor in her voice, I agree to the demands. Fabian didn't expect anything else, so he said, Good. Tomorrow, Julian will drop you off at our office to sign your contracts and go through the human resources process. We will arrange for a small rental car for you. We have a garage on hand that can provide employees with a decent car for a reasonable price. But that's all for next month. With that, Fabian said goodbye and walked away, leaving a confused Lydia behind him. She got up and was about to go to her room again when suddenly she saw the binoculars. She looked up and saw that just at that time, Fabian came to the door of Isaac's house and was greeted by her ex-husband. She didn't have enough time to get a proper look at Isaac, however, so she placed the binoculars next to the window. She began to make a list of requirements to give her life a fresh start. It was almost dark when Lydia heard the sound of a car pulling up the street. Tommy and Julian were having dinner at a restaurant, so they wouldn't be home anytime soon. Looking out the window, she saw that the car had stopped in front of Isaac's door. She saw Isaac get out of the car and then saw a very pregnant woman with light brown curly hair hugging her ex-husband. Even through the binoculars, she could see sparks popping between them. She envied this woman and felt terribly jealous, angry and lost at the same time. This should be her man, in her house. It was some time before she came to her senses. After all, she was the reason why that woman was standing on the porch in the light of the lantern, not herself. Despairing, she sat down. Lydia realized what she had done was terribly foolish, but surely there must be a way to get back into Isaac's heart? With only 2 weeks until Tommy's wedding, Lydia tried to find as much information about Isaac as she could. The binoculars helped. She could see Isaac's face, his graying hair, his straight posture, and slender body. She could see him interacting with the boy. Timothy, wasn't it? She couldn't help herself and felt the prick of envy again. Isaac was so good with children. She tried to elicit from Tommy about Isaac's pregnant mistress, but was constantly rebuffed. Neither Tommy, Julian, nor Fabian responded to her inquiries. There were no direct answers to her questions either. The day before Tommy's wedding, she was informed that Isaac and Laura were also getting married, and Lydia was shocked. She had been invited to Tommy's wedding and couldn't refuse, but the thought of having to witness her ex-husband's wedding was a direct blow to her ego. She felt devastated, all her hopes of reuniting with Isaac gone. That slut was pregnant with Isaac's child. Why hadn't she thought of that? She felt like such a fool. Lydia turned and gave final instructions to the movers who were hauling her belongings away to the house provided to her by Bexcon. Isaac had made an exception for Lydia to attend the wedding, an after-party at his and Laura's home. There was dinner, and after dinner there was a band and dancing. The dinner was held in a friendly atmosphere. The food was exceptional, and Lydia was seated between 2 young men who animatedly discussed music and theater with her. When the dancing began, Lydia sat in a corner, lost and dejected, and watched the festivities. She noticed that hardly any alcohol was consumed and was surprised by it. The traditional dances began. The bride and groom, the father of the bride with the bride. Mother of the bride with... She saw Julian looking at Isaac, who only nodded imperceptibly. Julian turned and walked over to Lydia. "Ma'am, would you do me the honor of dancing this dance?" asked Julian politely. Lydia stood up, accepted Julian's hand, and walked out onto the dance floor. She felt uplifted as they danced. She loved to dance but hadn't done so in years, and Julian was a good dancer. Out of the corner of her eye, she noticed Tommy and Laura talking to Isaac, who was nodding but looked concerned. The dance with Julian was over, and she was about to crawl back into her corner when she suddenly felt a tap on her shoulder. She turned and looked up into Isaac's face. It was then, up close, that she noticed his eyes, wrinkled, deep and sad, that had seen a lot of suffering. My God, what's happened to him, she thought. And then it hit her. It's me. I'm the one who happened to him. I'm such a bitch. Suddenly, she didn't understand herself. How could she look at herself in the mirror? In a fit of madness, she had put this man through hell and had the nerve to be jealous that he had escaped the hell she had created. Within seconds, she lost all self-esteem and confidence, physically shuddering at the thought of what she had done to this man. Then she realized Isaac was holding out his hand, waiting patiently as her thoughts swirled in her head and bombarded her. "I'm sorry, are you asking me?" she asked in a small, timid voice. Isaac repeated, "Will you honor me, Lydia, by doing this dance?" Without another word, Lydia clung to Isaac and sobbed. Not long after the dance began, she regained her composure. Gathering all her remaining courage, she whispered, choking back tears, "Isaac, I'm so sorry for what I did to you. I know you must hate me now." "I'm sorry I can't give you your years back," Isaac replied. "Lydia, I'm glad you're remorseful. But we are dancing because the two women I love most in the world have asked me to show you compassion. I did for you a little of what you did for me at one time, and you felt a little of the pain I felt. I say a little. Ramsday's words, 'You will tell him the rules and you'll deal with it or else,' and subsequent betrayal seared my soul. I hated you until I met Laura. She filled the void with her love and all feelings for you evaporated. We dance here as strangers with a shared past. I will no longer avoid you because of our daughter and soon-to-be grandchild, but it will be a long time before I can call you a friend. Mind you, I have two gatekeepers who will be watching you like hawks, with very sharp claws that they will not be afraid to use if you try to do anything, in their opinion, inappropriate to me. Now let's enjoy the dance together." Lydia almost inhaled the touch of the man she had once forgotten she loved. He felt different. Whereas before he had been a little soft to the touch, now his shoulders seemed bony and hard. His gait and movements betrayed strength and endurance. She remembered how capable he'd been between the sheets and marveled again at her own stupidity. Now she had paid a price for it, a terribly steep and terrible price. Instead of helping her daughter on the most beautiful day of her life, she was barely tolerated as a guest. Her father's fiancée was instead acting as her daughter's mother. They were so close, Lydia noticed. Julian had asked her to dance, and it should have been as familiar as breathing, but it required Isaac's permission. And her daughter and his wife had to tell Isaac to step over his shadow. Depression descended upon her like an evening shadow in a ravine. Sharply delineated, inescapable, heralding a cold, long night. She shuddered and clung to the man she had betrayed and lost. In Isaac's arms, she mourned all that she had cast away. Isaac witnessed the transformation from a proud and beautiful woman to a broken and insecure one. He was done with her. Now she had to fight for her return just as he had. He said quietly in her ear, "There are people who will support and help you. I've given you the basics. The rest is up to you." The dance ended. Tommy walked over to her and said, "I can see that this has been very emotionally intense for you. Would you like to stay the night? I don't think you should drive right now. I don't want to lose my mom. Or should I arrange to have someone drive you home?" Lydia accepted the offer to drive her to her new home, and Ben and Anna drove her home. Before they arrived, Anna turned around in her seat and looked at Lydia. She said, "You are alone and friendless. You did wrong and you will pay for it for a long time. We all saw that tonight you finally realized what you did to Isaac instead of putting up with the inconvenience and dealing with the consequences. That was Isaac's goal. He completely destroyed Ramsday. That man is in for a hell of a time in prison, and not in a good way, but Isaac is not about to deprive his daughter of a sane mother. That's why, on Isaac's behalf, we're offering you counseling. It will help you understand why you went down the wrong path and deal with the consequences. All you have to do is think about it, and if you agree, tell Fabian." When Lydia arrived, she entered the dark house, took off her coat, and sank down on the sofa. There, in the darkness, she was released. She began to sob as all her emotions swept over her. Remorse and a deep sense of loss came to the forefront, and it was all her fault. Isaac had been hurt, but had moved on and found new happiness. Now it was up to her to try to do the same. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, so subscribe to my channel and watch the next video.